And good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Sports Inquirer Show. This is E. Marcel Portute. We're recording this on June 11th, 2019. Hopefully everyone's having a good day out there. If you're listening to us on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop, whatever forms or means that you hear from us. We're very excited about today's show. It's jam-packed as always. We have a lot to go over, but always we like to discuss how you can follow everything that we're doing. And the best way to do that is head to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net. We recently uploaded 2 videos, exclusive videos, from Atlanta United with manager Frank de Boer and captain Michael Parkhurst as they prepare for tonight's U.S. Open Cup match at the Charleston Battery. So make sure you go there and check it out. We're the only ones recording video there at the site, so make sure that you do that. On Twitter and Instagram, Sports Inquirer, all one word. You subscribe to those, you will be able to get all of our up-to-date content, as well as on Facebook under The Sports Inquirer. Those are all separate words. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under The Sports Inquirer. We archive all of our items from the past and keep it up to date with all of our present and future content. So make sure you subscribe to there. You can get all of our previous Sports Inquirer shows, Sports Inquirer podcasts. We brought back the Verbal Submission podcast last week, which is focused on combat sports, including professional wrestling. And someone had a joke when I was at United Practice when I said I do the podcast on professional wrestling. It's like, is it real or is it fake? Almost got into an argument about that. It's always real, maybe scripted, but it is real. But no, seriously, we're excited to bring that show back because there's been a lot of activity with All Elite Wrestling and New Japan, and of course World Wrestling Entertainment and all of those forms, as well as UFC and Bellator and things along those lines. So there's a lot of combat sport activities going on recently. And we did our show last week, and we're going to record our next edition on June 12th, hopefully. Lord willing, we should be able to get that show up. So once we have that show, we're going to bring back some more specific topics. Baseball is a topic that has been requested, or I want to do more of and have not been able to. But we're going to try to bring baseball back, and we might do a specific show for that as we've done in the past. So if you subscribe to all of our social media platforms, as I said, from Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as YouTube and SoundCloud for the audio availabilities, you will be able to see everything that we're doing. As far as today's show itself, we're going to recap last night's Golden State and Toronto NBA Finals contest. We're also going to discuss the Atlanta United match tonight against the Charleston Battery in the U.S. Open Cup. We will delve into Team USA on the men's side as they prepare for the Gold Cup. The women play today against Thailand, so we're not going to necessarily talk about that match when it comes up, because by the time you listen to this, most likely that match will be either taking place or concluded. So we're not going to preview that, but we may delve into some things with that. Also talk about the UEFA League of Nations, which is won by Portugal. And finally, Miscellaneous department, where we talk about everything under the sports sun. We're going to delve into the French Open in tennis, the Canadian Grand Prix in Formula One, and the Stanley Cup Finals as well. So a lot going on in today's show. We're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we are going to go straight into the NBA Finals and all that took place last night between Golden State and Toronto here on the Sports Inquirer Show. Okay, we're back to Sports Inquirer Show. E. Marcel Portute speaking with you. Let's discuss the Kevin Durant injury impact first, and then we'll delve into the actual X and O's of the contest. The game itself, Golden State was able to defeat the Toronto Raptors 106-105 to make the series. It was in Toronto, and the series is now 3-2 for Toronto, and Game 6 is going to take place on, today's 11th, the 13th. A lot of gaps in between these games, which has made this series seem like it's taken forever. The need to have 3 days between contests or an extra day for travel is a little excessive, but that's the way that they're rolling. But as far as the game itself, let's start with the Durant injury. As I said, if you did not watch the contest, Kevin Durant made his return to the playoffs in game, I believe, in 33 days, so over a month. He got injured in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs for Golden State against the Los Angeles Clippers. He had the calf injury. He was able to come back and make his return. Played 12 minutes, had 11 points, looked like he was spry, hit a few three-pointers, very active on the defensive end. I was very surprised by that. But unfortunately for him, while handling the ball in the contest and dribbling, he jabbed with his right foot to just make a move, and his ankle, calf, Achilles gave out on him, and he was unable to put pressure on it, or barely any pressure. And he fell to the ground and was injured. And Bob Meyer, the general manager of the Warriors, confirmed that is an Achilles injury. Now, we don't know if it's torn or strained or things along those lines, but if you combine that with a calf injury and him walking out with a boot on and on crutches, it's pretty safe to assume that he is not going to make his return to this series, and maybe not to the Golden State Warriors. But as far as the series itself, tough loss for the Warriors. They have been really working with a patchwork group of players since Durant has been out of the contest. And actually, he did not get injured against Los Angeles. My fault. He got injured again the West Conference semifinals against Houston. As you know, if you listen to the show, I'm a stickler for facts, and that would have been a big call out right there. I messed up when Durant got injured. It was against the Rockets, and the Warriors were able to recover from that injury, and at least in the Western side of the playoffs, where they were able to win 2 games against Houston and then sweep Portland to reach the finals. Now, the finals is where you've seen Durant's absence cause trouble on both ends, offensively and defensively. Now, granted, Golden State was able to win a few games in the finals, and you could argue last night they're able to win without Durant, but overall, it's been a struggle without him. And I said last night, you saw some good ball movement, you saw balance and flow before he got injured. And it's one of those things where injury itself, he's a grown man. And that's not an insult to him. And it's unfortunate to see players get injured. And we'll get to the Raptor fans in a moment as far as them cheering for that, or some of them cheering when he got injured. But Durant himself, the risk and reward, that's his choice. He tested it out. He did practice. The officials for Golden State and his agent were there, and he made the decision to go out there and play. And they said he was cleared. Now, being cleared can mean many things. Are you cleared enough to walk on the court and play a few minutes? Sure. Durant probably could have done that a few weeks ago when it comes down to it. But to perform at an elite level, that's questionable. That's where it comes to the player. The team itself, obviously, they want him to play. They need him to play. And that whole notion of the Warriors wanting to win without Durant was ludicrous. They had to do that because they didn't know if Durant was coming back. But to think that Klay Thompson and Steph Curry and Draymond Green, I know on the outside and the exterior, they may have that cockiness, especially Draymond Green earlier in the year. They had occasions like, we don't need you or go away. They need Durant. They know that. They know they need him to be playing at a high level to put themselves in the best position to win a championship. So the fact that they wanted him back was obvious. And Durant wanted to come back and play. One, it's an opportunity to win a championship. You can never have enough of those. We've reached a stage of sports where the amount of championships matter almost as much or maybe more than your actual skill level. And Durant knows that the more championships he has, the higher up the hierarchy he'll go as far as when you make your top 5 or top 10, top 20 all-time players. 3 championships is a lot better than 2. So that's why Durant wanted to come back. And plus, he's close with the team. He wants to be out there for his brothers. And Golden State does have that strength in numbers. A lot of that is, of course, marketing and to promote some things. But I really legitimately believe that he wanted to come back and play for the team and do the best that he could. So he risked all of that. And the financial side of things, he does have a player option for $31.5 million next year if he picks that up if he needs 1 year and he could get paid that and recover. Because if it is a torn Achilles, we're not doctors here, but that's going to shut him down for a good amount of the 2019-2020 regular season. So you get paid that amount for rehabbing. But I think with Durant, he's going to get that maximum deal from whatever team it is, whether it is the New York teams with the Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets, the Clippers in Los Angeles, maybe a wild card team we're not thinking of right now, or Golden State itself. So all of those things are, money-wise, he's going to make what he earns or what he deserves. What his market's going to be very good. Now, the rehab's going to stink, and he's going to deal with all that. And he's 30. And not that he's an explosive player and he does windmill dunks down the lane all the time, but you have to figure he does have what's his ability as far as recovering from an Achilles injury. It's tough. And he is a mobile guy. He's a taller guy. So every little part of his body has to work right. And I think that's where the accumulation of the calf injury, overcompensation, his body just was not right. And I think that led to the injury, non-contact, very unfortunate. So all that being said, there's no blame. I've read and I've heard people try to blame Durant for coming back and, he did this to himself coming back from the injury, and now he's cost himself another season or potentially a season upcoming in the NBA. Some people blame the Warriors of them forcing him out there to play when he was not 100%. All that being said, it's sports. That's just the way things work. These athletes, you take for granted the durability of these athletes, and you take for granted the fact that they're out there competing at a high level at that field, whatever sport it is. In basketball, you have grown men who are taller and stronger than the average human being on a hardwood court, jumping up and down on their legs. And it's surprising that you don't see more injuries like this happen. Now, this is the biggest stage, and Durant's arguably the best player in the world, so the microscopic focus is on him and what's going on in the league and as far as his injury. But this could happen anytime to anybody. It just happened to be with Durant. And it's just sports. It's the way it is. If you're out there competing at an athletic level, your body can break down on you at any time. And that's what happened with Durant. And obviously it's a very emotional time. Durant's emotional. Bob Meyer, the general manager, he was crying, giving the update on the Achilles. Some say he was a little theatrical with it. I think it's a tough moment for him, any organization, because Durant really could have shut it down if he wanted to. I'm not saying Durant's a hero and should be lauded and praised for his valor and his sacrifice. I mean, when that's with sports, you got to have a perspective on what those words mean. But in the world of professional sports, it was I don't want to say courageous, but it was a very respectable move by Durant to come back with this injury, with it hampered, and ultimately he's going to cost himself, I don't know if monetarily, but some playing time in his career. So I think that's where you get Meyer and the Warriors are very appreciative of Durant for doing that. And the Toronto fans, as far as them cheering him being injured, we're all sports fans if you're listening to this, or a fan of something, whether it's sports or your business, whatever industry that you're in. If you're competing for a championship or your promotion or an award, whatever field that you're in, if your main competitor is unable to compete or is disqualified for it, whether it's through injury, suspension, things along those lines, cheating, while you want to beat the best at their best, you do realize that it will make your situation easier if that team or player is eliminated. Now, I don't think the fans want Durant to die or to be permanently hampered by his injury, but I think the fans realize that, hey, Durant is hurt, he's down. This is a good situation for my team, the Raptors, to win a championship. Now, to openly cheer for him being hurt, it's almost as bad as Michael Irvin, the Hall of Fame wide receiver for Dallas Cowboys, when he broke his neck and it was the final play of his career in Philadelphia, and they were cheering for him or cheering the injury and cheering against him. Now that one was that was harsher because that was a neck injury. You didn't know if he would survive that as far as walking or paralysis, things along those lines. Knew Durant was not, it wasn't that severe of an injury, but still, if I was a supporter of the Raptors, I don't know if I would cheer. I just probably would have been silent in that regard. But internally, I'd have been like, wow, Durant's down. That really helps my team on championship level. And that's not all fans, but you have some, and there's always a story about crazy fans. And a fan is short for fanatic. And you're going to have a group of people, if you have a professional, any sport environment, especially at a professional level with a team like the Raptors competing for the first championship, you're going to have fans cheering when a player like Durant gets hurt in that scenario. It could have been Durant. It could have been Looney, who was playing through I don't know if it's a broken collarbone, but dealing with some rib issues, or he's hurt. It could have been Steph Curry. It could have been Marcus Cousins. Any one of those players could have been hurt or sprained something, and they'd been cheering. That's just the way fans are. I'm not excusing it, but I will say that's just the way sports works. It brings out that type of tribalism in people. So it didn't surprise me at all that the fans were cheering when he was down and hurt. And you saw the Raptor fans the Raptor players did not like that, and that's understandable. Professional sport athletes, they all know the scenario, and you know when someone, whether if they just sprained something or got knocked down and they can get back up, and or they know, because I'm not a professional athlete, but they know when it's a serious injury. So the Raptors, even though they want to compete for a championship and they want to win, they also know Durant. They know what he's doing out there, and they know what can happen to them at any time. That's bad karma to be cheering for injuries or wanting injuries to another player, especially a severe one. So they knew when Durant went down, that was a major injury. And that's why you could see them. And he had personal ties to Ibaka, is friends with Durant. Serge Ibaka, the player for the Toronto Raptors, they're close. So, he didn't want to see his brother go down in that regard. And then in general. So you saw the players not liking that. And I think it did inspire the Warriors, though, to win without Durant. Not to win in spite of him, but to win for him. And now let's get to the X's and O's of the game itself. Really back and forth affair. When Durant went down, you saw DeMarcus Cousins. Credit to him. He probably went from not playing at all, potentially, in that contest, to giving them 20 minutes and 14 points and 6 rebounds. So he was able to keep the team afloat in the absence of Durant. But Toronto themselves, they led by 6 late in the fourth quarter. And Kawhi Leonard, he had a personal 10-0 run to give the Raptors the lead. And Leonard had a really strong performance as well. 26 points, 12 rebounds. You got Kyle Lowry at 18 points. Marcus Gasol, 17 points, 8 rebounds. He was very active in the beginning because he had a smaller player and Draymond Green on him. And Gasol took advantage of that. So they were rolling as far as the Raptors go. And then Nick Nurse, their head coach, got in the way of things. Called 2 timeouts for Toronto late in the fourth quarter when they were ahead. Unnecessary timeouts. And later on in the game, if you heard post-game, he said that he wanted to give his players a rest because they were fatigued. Fair point, coach, but you also give the Warriors rest. They're already down Durant. They're down Looney. They are really hanging on by barely anything. And you give them the stamina with your timeouts to get back into form. And that's where you saw Draymond Green hit a big three-pointer. Klay Thompson hit a big three-pointer. That really got the Warriors back into play. And then you saw a lot of breaks for the Raptors as far as certain calls. They didn't get a travel call against Leonard. You saw Marcus Cousins. He did a tip-in on a shot. It was called offensive interference because they thought it was in the cylinder. I didn't think it was. I thought it was outside the cylinder. Very close call, but a lot of times you won't get that call in a late-game scenario. So Toronto got a lot of breaks in that regard. And all of that came down to the very final play where Toronto is down one, few seconds left in the contest. They get the rebound, and Nurse decides not to call a timeout. So Leonard has the ball at the top of the key, or really outside the three-point line. They go to double him immediately because the Warriors know if we're going to lose, we're not going to lose with Kawhi Leonard shooting when he's in that hot form. So the ball goes to Van Fleet. He throws it out to Lowry at the three-point line in the corner. Forced three-point attempt. Draymond Green gets a block or gets a tip of the ball for the block. Game over. So devastating loss for the Raptors as far as being able to clinch the series and the championship at home. So now the teams have to go back to Golden State in Game 6 in Oracle in the final game in that arena. And I've already seen people say that it's going to be Game 7 already, that the Warriors have that game under wraps already. I don't necessarily think that's the case. You have to figure the Warriors could be a favorite because they've been playing without Durant already, and we already know what the scenario is. Looks like Klay Thompson, he's back in the form. He missed Game 3 of the series, but he's been back the past few games, and he had 26 points in the contest. Stephen Curry had 31. So their backcourt, the two main guys for the Warriors, outside Durant, of course, are in form. So you got to figure if those two are healthy, and Iguodala, I know he had a rough night, 30 points, only 30 minutes played, and only 5 points. But you figure that he can increase his production. DeMarcus Cousins will probably be get the start now, and he looked very good in the last contest. So all that being said, you have the Warriors who should be in form at home in Game 6. The Raptors, that's going to be a tough plane ride to go all the way back to Golden State after having the championship really within your grasp at home. So you got to worry about the letdown factor as far as that goes. But overall, the series has gone from blah, I think, without Durant, to him coming back and making it very interesting just by his presence being in it. And now it's very interesting with him not being in it. Unfortunate circumstances why he's not back in the series or in the series completely. But I think that's where it's going to be very interesting to see where these two teams go from here. So that was a very exciting contest. I'm leaning towards Golden State in Game 6. We may do a show before that contest, so I'll have a full prediction of that. We already know Durant's out. I don't have to wait for the MRI. Even if it says he didn't, for his sake, I hope he didn't tear anything. But even if it's a sprain, he's not playing again in this series. So I already assume that he's out. So even with him being out, I think Golden State could find a way to win Game 6. And then Game 7 in Toronto, that can go many places itself as well. So those are my thoughts in the Stagger Screen portion of the show on Game 5 of the NBA Finals that took place last night. And when we come back, we will go into the world of professional soccer and our offside trap here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Sports Inquirer Show. Marcel Pursuit. And now we're going to discuss professional soccer here on the offside trap portion of the show. We'll start with Atlanta United because they are the next team up in action that we follow or that we cover here on the site. And they're preparing to visit the Charleston Battery in the 4th round of the U.S. Open Cup. I like the U.S. Open Cup. I wish it was more in the landscape of professional soccer here in the United States. And it's a bad year for it, too, because you have the Gold Cup, and we'll get to the United States men's national team and their struggles through the recent friendlies. But the Open Cup is one of the oldest football tournaments in the world. I think the FA Cup has the advantage. I think they have been around the longest. But the United States Open Cup has been around, I think, since the teens. I need to look that up. Matter of fact, we're going to look that up right now. We're going to do some live research on the show. But the point is, and I'll look this up, Atlanta is playing at the Charleston Battery, a USL championship team. And that's the unique part about the Open Cup. For those of you not familiar with it, the way it works is that every team professionally and I believe amateurs as well, in the United States competes in one tournament, and they have the chance to win the Open Cup. So you go from MLS to the USL Championship, all the way down to lower leagues than that. Now there's qualifications, and you got to work your way through the tournament, and MLS teams get to start it in the fourth round. So it's a very fun tournament. Founded in 1914. That was the first U.S. Open Cup. So you're talking more than 100 years old. So it's older than the NFL. It's older than the NBA. Major League Baseball has it beat by only a few years. So as far as organized professional sports, so you add that all together, it is one of the oldest tournaments in the United States and the world. So I'm very excited about it. But the thing about it is that it's an awkward time of the year, especially this year with the Open Cup and the international break. You have a lot of players not available for it. And you also have some international rules. I believe you can only have 5 international players, which is non-United States players, on your roster for a match. And there are exceptions as well. Atlanta caught a break with Julian Gressel and Gordon Wild. They both have green cards, so they are non-United States citizens, but they have a green card, so it doesn't count against the international slot. But Gressel, he won't be available. We'll go down the list of the availabilities. But the match itself is Atlanta is coming off of they're an extended break. They were able to defeat the Chicago Fire 2-0 in their 2-0 in their last match, which was on June 1st. So they've had a little bit of a break. The Charleston Battery, they earned a 2-1 win at Nashville. The score was tied 1-1 after regulation, but the Battery were able to win the penalty kicks 3-0. So a 3-0. I gotta say no. Can't say nothing. It's soccer. So they were able to win that 3-0. So now they are home and they get to host an MLS team. And there's history between these two teams as well. For the first year of Atlanta United's existence, they were the kind of minor league team, to put it in simple terms, for the Atlanta was the parent team for Charleston Battery, which was the minor league team. So there was a lot of player interactions. You had guys like Mario Williams and I believe Miles Robinson that are current Atlanta United players were playing for the Battery as far as in their development. Now there's Atlanta United 2, and they are now they're kind of the minor league team for Atlanta United 1, or the main team. So there's still a relationship, though, between the two teams. So they've crossed paths quite a bit. The match itself, this upcoming tonight, it's going to be a little bit different. You have unavailabilities from Joseph Martinez, who's with Venezuela, and with Copa America, and Ezequiel Barco. He is returning from the U20 World Cup representing Argentina. So those two players are unavailable. You have Tito Villalba recovering from injury. He is in Argentina. And finally, Julian Gressel, Brad Guzan, and Leandro Gonzalez-Perez are healthy scratches. They are not making the trip to Charleston for the contest. So we talked with manager Frank de Boer about the roster approach for tonight's contest. So we're going to hear from Coach now.
It's in every league, it's the same. And you have to look, what I said, to look very carefully to your players who play the most minutes. And so I will leave, for example, Leandro almost played everything, so he will stay at home. Brett Guzan will stay at home, Julian Gressel will stay at home. The rest will travel to Charleston, and we take it very seriously. And we had a couple of days off, and everybody has to be fit to play this game. So also, we played a lot of games. I think that to stay in that rhythm is very good. And, so I'm not going to change that much, and I take it very seriously because normally it's the fastest way to get to the prize.
And the good part about the U.S. Open Cup, and at least in this portion of it, in this stage, is that it gives younger players more time to perform at a high level. From Brandon Vasquez to Romario Williams, Andrew Carlton, a lot of players who have been struggling to find first team minutes this season. You most likely will see at least two of those guys in action tonight, maybe all three in some form, especially with the Copa America commitments for Joseph Martinez. He might be not with the team all throughout the month of June into July if Venezuela makes a long run. So Brandon Vasquez and Mario Williams, the forwards, the younger guys, really have a chance to show the opportunity to get starting minutes while Joseph Martinez, is off. So we're going to hear from de Boer once again on the younger players, and he focuses specifically towards the end, Andrew Carleton, a player that has once again struggled to find those first team minutes and the opportunity that the U.S. Open Cup provides for them.
When he came in, and he scored, of course, a goal, but it's good for his confidence. And he's eager to show himself also in the training, and he's doing it. So I'm really pleased with his development right now after this long injury. And so I hope that he's going to continue like that, what he's showing right now. And it's up to him, to make it with Romario for Joseph as hard as possible. And normally there is no discussion right now who's number one. That's Joseph. But the number two spot, in the beginning of the season, it was doubtful who was number one or number two or number three. And they have to challenge and they have to show it in training, and there I will make my choices. And of course, if they're playing at the USL in the second team, they have to show themselves also that hey, ready. If something is happening to Joseph or he's not there, I will step in for you because I think I'm ready. Which is only up to him, I think he's still young, and
Andrew Carleton.
In his development progression, and that's normally not like Matthijs de Ligt, who is only sky high, but normally you always see the young players going up and down, and he's a great example of that. And he has to find that trigger that he always gives 100% and show that quality that he has, because everybody knows he has fantastic quality. But he put him in his mind, and he switched on every moment, when he's on the training ground or when he's playing. And for example, the first half, the last USL team, I saw the match was not really. The second half was much better, and you want him to expect him, hey, not 45, 90 minutes. But he's learning, and he wants to learn, and hopefully he's coming there. We have a lot of confidence in him.
And now his manager, Frank de Boer, was serenaded by the loud phone ringtone in the background. I have many pet peeves in life, and one of them is a loud ringtone on a phone, especially that annoying sound that you hear, that generic Samsung tone. It annoys a lot of me. I do not like it. But someone had the phone on in there, and what can you do? But you heard from manager Frank de Boer talking about Romario and Brandon competing for that number one spot at forward. And with Joseph Martinez and his Copa America commitments, those two guys are next in line to play forward. And you'll see one of them start tonight, and I'm sure another one will be a substitute in the contest. And if they're able to win tonight, they'll advance to the next round before MLS contest. So that they'll potentially have two U.S. Open Cup matches before MLS action. So that's going to give an opportunity for them to play again as far as competing for that top spot at forward. And then he ended it with Andrew Carleton talking about his development and maturation as a young player and what this time of the season can mean for him. United itself has struggled in the Open Cup. They've been able to win the MLS Cup, obviously last year, be right in contention for Supporters' Shield, which is another trophy for the best record or the most points in the MLS regular season. But the U.S. Open Cup has been a struggle. They lost at Miami 2 years ago, and they lost at home Chicago last year. So they have not been able to advance beyond 2 games in the Open Cup. And that's something that the players are aware of, including captain Michael Parkhurst, and he discussed that with us.
Yeah, I think it helps right now that the Open Cup is all we have right now. There's no MLS games for still another couple weeks, so if things go well against Charleston, we have 2 Open Cup games before we play any other competition. So the sole focus right now is Open Cup and getting through Charleston, and then hopefully getting through the next round as well. And we know that we haven't progressed past 2 games in this tournament yet, and we want to. We talked about it's the quickest way to a trophy. It's a trophy that we obviously haven't won yet as a club and would like to. We want to keep adding to the trophy case. So guys are taking it just like any other game. Very seriously. We watch film. We work on set pieces. We feel prepared for tomorrow.
Do you say you did it in the Champions League? Well, playing in a place like Charleston, a non-MLS team, maybe a smaller atmosphere, intimate things like that.
Yeah, I think that that game in Costa Rica showed that we have to be ready for away games. We have to be ready for different environments and different teams and not taking anything for granted. We can't play naive against anyone, and maybe we went into that game a little naive, and hopefully we learn from that and don't have that same mistake, because unlike that tournament, this is one and done. If you have a poor 90 minutes, that's it. You're out. And so we need to make sure that doesn't occur.
And it is one and done. There's no return leg. It's not an aggregate score or anything along those lines. If you lose, you're done. So it's a kind of a March Madness single elimination tournament vibe or feeling for the U.S. Open Cup. And that leads to upsets. And you'll see some MLS teams lose to a USL championship team this year. It happens every year. So Atlanta wants to avoid that fate for themselves. So we'll keep track of that match tonight and everything that goes on. Other soccer thoughts overall. We mentioned the U.S. men's national team. They're preparing for the Gold Cup later on this month, or I think they start next week. But they have had major struggles in their friendlies preparing for the Open Cup. They lost 1-0 against Jamaica and 3-0 this past Sunday against Venezuela. To be fair, with the U.S. men's national team, no Christian Pulisic, no Tyler Adams, guys that are considered maybe the 2 top field players on the team. They're not available. They're recovering from their European season and working their way into form. But you have a new manager with Greg Burkhalter, and it's just not a good start for the team. Friendlies are weird because you don't necessarily – it's not – it's competitive, but it's not – you're not trying to show too much necessarily. But with Burkhalter being a new manager, trying to install a system – it just has not looked fluid and not looked organized. And it doesn't help when you have the Zach Steffen with the goalie for the team, him struggle, have a ball handling error that led to a pretty easy goal for Venezuela. They're trying to play from the back. He mishandles it. The Venezuelan player is able to get it, tap it in, and you go from there. And as I said, the Gold Cup, maybe it can turn it around, but you also have friendlies. You're trying a lot of different systems. You're trying to different players, different situations, things like that. But it's not a good look. I don't necessarily want to say the U.S. is screwed in the tournament, but it's going to be very tough, I think, for them to win it. You have Mexico with Tata Martino, interestingly enough, former manager for Atlanta United. You have to figure them to be the pretty solid favorites in the tournament. Costa Rica usually brings a strong squad. So I thought Jamaica looked respectable in their match against the United States. And Jamaica's made the last 2 finals of the Gold Cup, so you have to look at them as a major contender. So we'll see what happens there with everything that takes place as far as the U.S. men's national team. Women, as I said, from the United States play today against Thailand. We'll see what happens there. It's a deeper pool than in the past, where the United States has been the main team and dominant. I think you have a lot of the European nations starting to catch up with the United States, and also the Asian teams as well. Japan's always a threat. I know they lost last World Cup to them pretty handily in the final, but they're going to be a really strong contender. You got to figure England can be interesting. France, they're the host nation. Host nations always get a boost whenever they're hosting a World Cup or any major tournament. So the United States has their work cut out for them. So getting against Thailand will be a good start for them. I enjoyed watching the inaugural UEFA League of Nations tournament, which was won by Portugal, the inaugural one this year. I think that It's interesting to have competitive matches during this period of friendlies, and European qualification is taking place this year as well. So luckily, you have Euro qualification, so that's a little bit more competitive than just friendlies playing the same team and playing the B and C squads, the second and third best versions of these international teams. When you're playing for a championship, you had Cristiano Ronaldo out there. You had Virgil van Dijk. Well, the final was Portugal and the Netherlands. So obviously Ronaldo for Portugal, Virgil van Dijk, the EPL Player of the Year from Liverpool, and Champions League winner for the Dutch. So you had those caliber of players in a final at Portugal. So they lucked out. They had the home team in the final. Very good atmosphere in Porto. And I think that's a good thing. It's very competitive. If that was a normal friendly, you most likely would not have seen those guys coming off of their European seasons. But they're playing for a trophy and a championship and qualification purposes. So they were all out there in a competitive match. So I think that's a good thing for UEFA to have that take place in a non-Euro year. Now, next year we have Euros 2020. So that's when we'll get some really big-time matchups in the top teams. But in a non-Euro year, I think it's good to have that League of Nations. And they made a lot of money. So, UEFA and FIFA, they love to make money. So there was a full house. There were a lot of people there. I'm sure the ratings were pretty respectable. I watched it from here in the United States, and people have been talking about it. So if it made money and the gate was strong, they're going to have another one. So we'll see how the format is on non-Euro years from this day on forward. We'll take our final break, and then we're going to go to the Miscellaneous department, where we'll discuss some different things in the world of sports here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, final segment of the show here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, we're going to discuss the French Open in tennis, the men's side. Rafa Nadal was able to win his 12th French Open championship with a victory over Thiem in the final. I don't think we'll ever see another man or woman win a major like Rafa Nadal as far as getting their 10th in their career. He's 93-2 all time in Paris. And to put that in perspective, just French Opens alone would have put him tied for 5th all time in majors on the men's side. Just those 12 alone. He has 18 currently, 2 behind Roger Federer. But to see his dominance on one surface, and his very first major was the French Open when he was a teenager, and now the man is in his mid-30s. I think he's 33 or 34, and still winning at a strong clip. As I said, when the man has entered the tournament, he's only lost twice in 14 attempts. That's a ridiculous record for a player on one surface. He also has a career Grand Slam and a gold medal. He may be the most, if you look at most accomplished tennis players of all time on the men's side, the women's side is, we'll discuss women one day, we should, because you have Serena Williams and Chris Everett, Martina Navratilova, Steffi Graf, who I think may be the most accomplished one, or had the best year, best 1 year maybe in tennis history, was Steffi Graf in '88 when she won all 4 majors and a gold medal in the Olympics. But if you look at the men's side, it's really only 2 or 3 guys that could be on Nadal's level. That's with a career Grand Slam and a gold medal. You have Federer with the 20 majors, which is the most all-time. And Federer is still active, and I think he's going to be very lively to get 21 in Wimbledon, because I think this may be his last competitive year as far as winning majors. You've seen him play a lot more clay tournaments. He's starting to hit some spots that he normally wouldn't hit on his yearly circuit. I think he's starting to wind down on the career. So this may be his last Wimbledon as far as being a major competitor coming up in a few weeks. So he has 20 majors. And he has a career Grand Slam as well. So that may be the best. I think Rod Laver may have hit his uniqueness. He has 2 career Grand Slams. One as an amateur and one as professional in the non-open era. The open era is very different now, really since the 70s, where guys can play all of the majors, all the tournaments. The rules were different back in the 50s and 60s and in Rod's era. So he has the uniqueness of being an amateur and a pro and having Grand Slams in 1 year. So his is the Australian, that's why he's maybe considered the greatest of all time, despite all the things that are with Federer and Nadal and Djokovic as well. Can't forget him. But he has, I think, 14 majors. He's a little bit behind Nadal and Federer. But to see those players, these three guys, I said with Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, maybe 3 top 10 players, 3 out of your top 10 all-time players in history. And I know there's Agassi. I put Agassi in the top 10. I'm a little biased. I like Agassi. But Sampras and Bill Tilden, you have those guys there. You have McEnroe and Connors. I mean, those. If you made a list, you have Lendl. You can make those Arthur Ashe if you want to bring in more of just era that he did it as well and the significance of his impact on and off the court if you have a little sentimentality in that regard. But the point is you have 3 of the top 10 guys all time in the same era, and each of them have their dominant tournaments, where Nadal has his 12 in Paris. Like Federer has 8 in Wimbledon. Djokovic, he has at least 5 or 6 in Australia. So they all have. The U.S. Open seems to be like the kind of the freewheeling one, and kind of any of those guys can win it. But tremendous effort by him at his age, old man in tennis terms, and continue to dominate the way that he has. So that was good to see. The Canadian Grand Prix, I watched a few laps of that as well. Lewis Hamilton won the race. Sebastian Vettel, for Ferrari, I thought was the better racer the entire race, and he was. But he did make a mistake during the race where he was leading, and Hamilton was putting pressure on him, and Vettel lost the rear end of his Ferrari when Hamilton was pressuring him on turn 3. Vettel had to cross the grass before rejoining the path of Hamilton's Mercedes, and the stewards deemed he rejoined the track in an unsafe manner and forced Hamilton off the track and handed Vettel a 5-second time penalty, which promoted him to second place at the checkered flag. You know, some dramatics afterwards where Vettel did not park his car where the other cars were because in F1, after you finish a race, you park the cars in staggered order at the finish line, and you have a little sign that says first, second, and third. So not only did he not park his car there, he moved the sign for Hamilton with the number 1 to number 2 and put the blank spot where his car should have been in number 1. He stormed off into the locker room area, and there's just a lot of drama there. And I personally thought that it was a kind of a harsh call there. I thought Vettel, because if Vettel did what the stewards would want him to do, is rejoin the track in the safe manner, he's going to ram right into Hamilton, and you have 2 cars going into each other at 200 miles an hour in a major accident. I thought Vettel was on the safe side, entering the track, or re-entering it the time that he did. Now, you can argue that he should not have lost his rear at that point. That's a fair argument, too. But I thought that it was a harsh 5-second penalty. But the stewards made that decision. But that's the rule that they have, that if you are off the track, usually the thing is if you're off the track, you can't pass anybody. And he didn't necessarily pass Hamilton because he was already in the lead. He was just trying to get back onto the course. So I guess the stewards want to let Hamilton pass, and then Vettel comes in behind him. I guess that would have been the safer way to do it. But I don't know about that. I thought that was a little harsh penalty there for Vettel. And now Hamilton, another win. Looks like he's on his way to another F1 championship. Just a dominant season performance for him so far this year. And then lastly, Stanley Cup Final. Really thought St. Louis would have had that game 6 at home. You got to figure going for the first championship in team history. We're down 1-0 early, down 2-0, and towards the third period. Once you go from there, they were unable to hold the lead. So now we have a Game 7 tomorrow night, which is Game 7 for Stanley Cup Final. Very exciting. It's in Boston. You have to figure that the Bruins will be a favorite. Tuukka Rask, he's back in the form, the goalkeeper for the Bruins. He's not going to allow a lot of goals. I mean, St. Louis is a pesky team. Respect to them. They went from the worst. They started the season, I believe, with the worst record in the league through the first 20 to 25 games, but have found their way to get into the playoffs and now made a really good run to the finals. But Boston at home in Game 7 with a good goalkeeper, that's very tough for the Blues to overcome. And I think that's all the notes we have for sports. I'm trying to think of anything else. Oh, respect to my Commodores. We'll throw Vanderbilt in there. Why not? The College Baseball World Series is starting in a few days, and Vanderbilt is in it for, I think, the 6th or 7th time in history. A very nervous moment for the Super Regionals were this weekend. They lost Game 1 to Duke by a pretty big margin. But Rucker, the freshman from Georgia, he threw a no-hitter in Game 2. So Vanderbilt was able to win that contest. And then deciding Game 3 last night, or no, it was on Sunday. So that was a few days ago. They were able to win that contest against Duke. And first, it's always fun to beat Duke as a Vanderbilt guy. A little rivalry there, just academically and otherwise. So they're able to beat Duke, and now they're in the College World Series, which starts this week. So very exciting times for Vanderbilt fans if you follow that sport. Also for a lot of SEC, a lot of Southeastern teams. Auburn's in there. They're able to win their series against North Carolina. So they're in there. They were leading 11-0 in the first inning of their deciding game last night. So you get off to 11-0 lead in Game 3 of a series, you should win that, and they did. Let's see, Florida State, Mike Martin's final year with the Seminoles as far as their baseball head coach. He led the Seminoles to a win at Baton Rouge at LSU to get to the World Series. So a very big moment for Mike Martin, trying to get his first championship. He's been there 40-plus years and trying to get their first NCAA championship. They've been to Omaha at least 10, 11 times under his tenure. I'm kind of freestyling here, so my stats I'm going off the top of the head as far as where I'm going. But I know he's been there at least 8 or 9 times with the Seminoles as head coach, but he's going for that first championship. I know Michigan was able to beat UCLA. UCLA was the number 1 overall seed, so that's good for Vanderbilt because they're the number 2 seed. You got to figure, so that's good for the Commodores, but very big win by Michigan going to UCLA, top team in the nation, and getting a series there. And the rest of the squads, I believe Louisville's in there, so they play Vanderbilt first in the World Series. Let's see, you have Mississippi State's in there, the Bulldogs, and Arkansas. They are in there, and Texas Tech. I think those are all of the teams in the World Series. Good balance as far as you have no West Coast team. That's kind of a bummer, but you have Michigan, which is unique, a little Midwestern action. Texas with the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and some Southern squads. I mean, SEC and ACC are the best conferences in college baseball, so you got to figure you're going to have representation from there. So that's what you're going to see as far as Florida State and the SEC schools and everything like that. You have to figure Vanderbilt's the favorite. I'm not saying that because I went there, but they have they have arguably the best depth as far as pitching goes, and they have with J.J. Bleday in their lineup, SEC Player of the Year. They have the best overall squad. And when it comes to College World Series, if you have to have depth at pitching, and that's what Vanderbilt has that a lot of other teams don't, and that's how come they're able to fall behind 1-0 in a series and get the win. So they have depth at pitching, and they have very good hitting, and they have experience. So those things all come into factor. So you have to figure that they are the favorite, but it can be a very competitive, I think, College World Series as far as baseball goes. So we'll be following that over the next few days once they get started up again. And that's the end of our show. We've covered everything that we can for now. So thanks for listening, and as always, head to thesportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. Head to Twitter and Instagram on the Sports Inquirer, all one word. Facebook, The Sports Inquirer. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under The Sports Inquirer. Those are all separate words. And hopefully we'll have a show coming out tomorrow. We'll probably do our verbal submission show. So for all of you mixed martial arts and wrestling fans, look forward to hearing that show. And then we'll try to do another show before Game 6 of the Finals. We'll have a little bit more, or the NBA Finals. And we'll also have the recap of Atlanta's contest at Charleston for the U.S. Open Cup. And it's sports. There'll be more things to talk about as we go along. Until next time, good fight and good night.